So good afternoon, everyone. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd like to pay our respects and offer our deep gratitude and honour to the ancestors who have preserved and passed down the ancient craft of astrology, a timeless wisdom connecting us across all cultures and generations. And so it's with great pleasure that the VAA welcomes back UK astrologer Julian Venables, who has been actively involved in the astrology community for the past almost 3 decades, I believe, teaching astrology at all levels and currently providing one-to-one tuition online via Zoom and offering astrology readings. Between 2008 and 2019, he wrote daily horoscopes for the New York-based celebrity website You Interview. Julian's was also chairman of the Brighton and Hove Astrology Circle for 12 years, from 2011 to 2023, and hosted regular webinars from astrologers all over the world. He's published his first novel, The Astrologer's Apprentice, in 2015, which is available on Amazon and Kindle. Julian has also self-published an astrology book called The Divine Order, available on Amazon. And I'll pop these details in the chat during the break. In today's lecture, Julian is presenting Enlightenment for astrologers and demonstrates how it can be found in the birth chart. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I'm very glad to be here today. Thanks for the, thank you, Kerry, for organising this. And thank you for having me on here today. It's like 3 a.m. in England, but I'm here. So that's good. And so I think we'll just start straight away I've got a PowerPoint to show you today. So we'll just sort of like start going through that and we'll see where we go with that. Okay, so I'll try doing a share screen now and hopefully you tell me if you can see that. Can you all see the main screen, as it were? Yeah? Excellent. Okay then. So, right, well, this is a lecture that is a work in progress, okay? So it is a philosophy lecture, actually, and with it comes a bit of a theory, and I hope that for you, it will also become quite a remarkable and interesting way to see the world. So this is about what we're actually going to do today. At the core of this talk is a couple of experiments that are called self-evident experiments. So I'm going to be showing you a way of seeing the world. And I believe, as I'll go through it bit by bit, we'll go through this slide by slide. It's a way that you can share with friends, you can show to your clients, you can just use yourself. It's a good way of looking at the world. And I'm going to show you how to see it in the birth chart. So what I believe is the sort of origin of it with regards to how it appears in the birth chart. So the reason I'm presenting this now is because Pluto's got into Aquarius, and we've got the rise of AI. And I really do believe that astrology needs to rediscover its spiritual foundation before we get the digital takeover. Because what I am showing you today, a computer cannot copy or imitate. That is to say, there has to be more than just waving the chart of symbols, a paper, a paper drawing or a chart on screen. And talking in the way that we talk about our pre-learned or our summarized words and phrases, which is what we do when we learn astrology. We have to understand what symbols mean, and but AI is doing that very well at the moment. So we have to kind of, I feel, to go one step away from that to keep us in a very original way of doing astrology, if you like. So the reason for this is because it came about over a few years, and I encountered many times, I've done a fair few psychic fairs over the years and various things like that, where you encounter a lot of people, and So over the years, I've encountered many times people who've said to me, oh, yes, I got my chart done years ago. And then they'll hand me a faded yellow birth chart that was stored in a book on a bookshelf for decades, and it was unused and forgotten about. And I think to myself, well, I accept that our astrological art is complicated and mathematical, and therefore quite a big step to understand. But those very same people who got their chart done once have then maybe gone on to fully immerse themselves in all sorts of other things, and in all sorts of new age, holistic, and healing arts, and they might have left behind the somewhat of the astrology in order just to do other things. And it's like, well, astrology is actually, to me, has always been one of the most sacred arts of all. You can't beat the mathematical ordering of the universe. And so I have to ask myself, why have people sometimes left astrology on the shelf a bit when they should really completely integrate it? And then I look at the world around me, and I look at the kind of, let's call it the new age scene, or and to me, it looks like there's huge swathes of people who are completely confused by things like conspiracy theories or all sorts of other somewhat even crazy ideas, where all along there's been the ancient system of understanding of how to connect with the divine. And that is incredibly simple, and it instantly brings happiness, and it's very relatable to astrology. So over the last few years, I've been on a bit of a journey, and I'm now here to try and present that journey to you as a kind of a bit of a work in progress or a theory. Okay. So I believe that ancient civilizations and humanity had a way of literally seeing the world around them that connected them to their gods and goddesses, to their nature spirits, at once and instantly, all the time. So it can be seen in their artwork and in their writing. And again, this lecture barely scratches the surface. It's a huge area of research and discovery, but I have clues and leads, and I'm gathering all this together gradually for another book. So essentially, ancient peoples spent a lot of their time and existence living in the present moment, in the here and now. And by ancient, I mean in the time before the pre-Socratics. So we're talking 6th century BC and before. Before that time, they didn't technically do the past and the future, or rather, they didn't dwell in the past or the future. For sure, it was there in their consciousness, but it wasn't what could be considered a problematic thing, because in our day and age, in our modern age, we have people who get stuck in the past and they worry a lot about the past. And then there are some who project themselves into the future who have the potential to get potentially anxious, because you have the present moment, and you can have two states of mind that are not, what if you come to the present moment? That's what I'm going to show you tonight, and how it's in astrology. So the state of being in the present moment, in the here and now, was to be divine with the creation and the creator. So there are all the ancient civilizations who worship their gods and goddesses because they were with them, they were feeling them, they were acting with them in the present moment. This is the essence of the art of divination, which is what we call the psychic arts today. So this lecture is to help us rediscover the old ways of seeing the world, which will help us rediscover the lost secrets of the planets. Once we've done that, we can then change our perception, which will then restore our place in the universe. And once we've done that, you will then be able to release your creative genius into a completely new understanding, which might just result in plentiful happiness and joy. So just a little bit about me. I discovered astrology when I was 21 years old. I'm now 57. Along the path, I took it seriously enough and dedicated studying enough to get the UK's faculty astrological diploma. I've been reading charts since the mid-1990s, but I only called myself a professional astrologer from about 2006 onwards. Several paths led me to formulate this theory, including Buddhism, non-duality philosophy, which is a large part of what I'm showing you today, But also in the last few years, I've discovered the author C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Narnia books, but he also wrote a lot of other books. And he's very much key to this today. But also, and important for me as a part of my personal journey, is that I was learning astrology and doing all my faculty training as I was learning modern psychological astrology with the faculty in the early 2000s and up until I did my diploma. The new discoveries of traditional astrology, Project Hindsight and all that, was also being lauded and discovered. And everyone was like, wow, you know. And what I found myself doing is asking myself, well, how, there I am being trained in modern psychological astrology, but simultaneously discovering traditional. So for me, it was like, how do I bridge these two things together? You know, how can I bring the two disciplines together, which is what this lecture is all about. So it's bringing, I'm bringing together, for the modern age, for the 21st century, I'm bringing together a fusion of modern psychological with traditional. That became a mission for me. And so today I'm presenting you the first concrete structure behind my studies and research. I'm blending the modern psychological with traditional. So there's a type of like a bridge that I've created. And it's in this book, my book called The Divine Order, which is available on Amazon, or you can buy it from my website. And so I'm going to show you, hopefully in later lectures as well, but in the book, there's a type of astrotherapy that I'm developing, and there are elements of traditional spiritual understandings combined with that. I'm writing a 3-book series. I've currently done the first book, which was published last year. And so this talk is to introduce the theory and encourage you to buy book 1, because book 2 is on its way. And so what got me started on this was a quote from Robert Zoller of Project Hindsight. And he said in a book, I'm trying to get this to go a bit faster. I've got a speech, and you know, anyway, where we're at. He said, the complete study of astrology, therefore, consists not of merely digging up the writings of the ancients and assiduously studying them, but penetrating their inner meaning and rediscovering their perceptual mode. That was the key word. We must ultimately see the world as the ancients did if we are to understand their metaphysics. That's Robert Zoller speaking in a book called Tools and Techniques for the Medieval Astrologer, Part 1, and it was published in 2003. So he basically was saying that we have to do more than just study the writings. We actually have to find the inner meaning and then rediscover the perceptual mode. Well, that set my mission on. You know, I was just like, well, how they, you know, it got me thinking. And today is the answer. You know, this is what I've brought to you now. Okay. So we need to go back to before the structure of horoscopes and birth charts as the mathematical process to understand why the birth chart was created in the first place. A change of perception helped astrology to be discovered and invented. So originally, humanity saw the world appearing in the space before them. Now, that's a really interesting phrase to think about. That's how they saw it. So they were in the first person perspective, and they looked up at the moon. They look up at the moon, and the moon was in them. It was inside of them because they could see it, because it was a manifestation of their mind. So they would look at, so standing on Earth, you'd look up at the sky and the stars and the planets, and like all the other planets, and they'd look at the night sky and things. And it was the same for everything. All life, all living things and objects were manifestations of the mind, picked up by one of the 5 senses. So in the ancients' world, they would look up at something and that was part of them. So what I'm trying to say here is that they lived in the first person perspective. And that's how humanity used to live, very naturally. They lived like that completely naturally. And I've just got one slide to show you that's the clue tonight. I've got lots of other things to show you, but in order to do the lecture in a short amount of time, I can only do so much, but I will show you the theory later on. You know, you'll see this. Now, there was a thing around about 600 BC, there was a thing called the axial age. And when several of the organized religions had their roots, so Buddhism, Confucius in China, various different, and that was when the third person perception became a lot more commonplace. And so that was the shift. There was a first person perspective that was always the way that was lived. And if you read, and I haven't got, but it's in ancient Greek writings, you can see how they used to perceive the world. They were in first person. So the world came to them because it was in them. It's a completely different way of understanding it. And it's quite profound. And I'm going to help you understand that concept bit by bit. So the ancients saw the lights in the sky, especially at nighttime. Most of the lights were fixed, the stars embedded into the firmament, like a dome that surrounded each person. Each person had their own dome. So when I look up into the night sky, I see a dome above me, but so would you as well. So each person's perspective had their own dome surrounding them. Yet they could all talk about what they saw because they were all in the same space. A dome or a celestial sphere surrounded them. However, some of the lights moved in a pattern and they kept doing repeating cycles. These were called the wanderers or the planets in Greek, and here they are. So you've got the moon is the closest, followed by Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. So without the help of a telescope, they only saw 7 of these wanderers. The 2 main players were the sun and the moon, and the other 5 were reflections of the sun's light, like the moon was as well. And of course, later on, other planets were added. And I'm not here to deny outer planets or anything like that. But what we're working with for today and for this lecture is what we can consciously be seen without a telescope. Because a telescope is a modern invention. And I'm going to show you how the ancients saw. So people often ask, why are the sun and moon planets? Well, the sun is the central light source. It's the star. The moon is its closest reflector. The sun lights up the heavens. So here's a question. What color are the heavens? They are all blue all the time, and they never go out. The heavens don't go out because our planet turns that the sky appears to go out. But because we are in the shadow behind the sun half the time, we have to wait for the half turn before we are bathed in the heavenly lights again. So we are bathed in the heavenly light for all eternity. The rotation is the Earth turning on its own axis, one complete spin in 24 hours. This is called the primary motion. So heaven is in fact blue. And I'm going to put an S on the end. It's the heavens are blue. Shakespeare wrote, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. This is from the play called As You Like It. It's Act 2, Scene 7, and it's spoken by the character Jacques. Now, the core of this metaphor is the comparison of life to a play, where individuals are actors playing various parts. Each part contributes to the whole. The stage is one person's individual life. These parts can be seen as archetypes. Each archetype appears as a part of us on our life journey, which leads to the 7 ages of man later on in the play. I mean, this is the introductory line. I could read the whole scene, but I'm not going to. You know, it's the introductory line to the 7 ages of man. And each is a stage in the play of life. Each of the 7 ages of man is a stage in the play of life, from infancy to old age. The phrase, they have their exits and their entrances, highlights how certain parts of ourselves arise and then fall away, much like the movement of mind, the movement of consciousness. This quote draws attention to the way we act and present ourselves differently in various situations. Now, at the core of astrology, we have rulerships and archetypes. It's how we see the manifestation of the world that is appearing in us, in our consciousness. Because the ancients saw their world in first-person perspective, then everything was arising in them, including the planets. Everything was arising in them all the time. Like walking from one room to another, like walking up a hill, down the other side, you're going to have things appearing in your space all the time. Over thousands of years, observation and correlation, the ancients saw how the planets were like characters appearing in their lives simultaneously as the wandering lights in the sky. Thus, they developed the rulerships and archetypes out of what they could see, appearing in the heavens above. And this led to a cast of 7 characters. So we've got, I'm just going to go through the archetypes very quickly. Okay, but there's always lots of things to say about these, but about the rulerships of each planet. But we'll start with the cast of the play, which our nearest neighbor, which is the moon. So the archetype is of the great mother or the caregiver, and the moon governs emotions, instincts, and the subconscious, mirroring the archetype of the nurturing and protective mother. It represents the inner child's need for security, as well as the cyclical reflective nature of the unconscious. The next planet out is Mercury, which is the archetype of the trickster or the magician. Mercury embodies intellect, adaptability, and wit. The trickster archetype plays with perception, challenges rigid thinking, and opens the way for deeper transformation through mischief, while the magician brings knowledge into tangible reality. Then we have Venus, who is the lover or the artist. Venus governs love, relationships, and aesthetics, mirroring the lover's deep need for connection and the artist's pursuit of beauty. This archetype is largely expressed through sensuality along with balance and harmony in relationships. Then we have the sun, who is the hero or the sovereign. The sun represents the core of the personality, the central self that seeks to express its unique light. The hero's journey aligns with the sun's purpose, bold, creative, and seeking individuation through challenge and triumph. Then we have Mars, the warrior and the conqueror. Mars fuels assertiveness, willpower, and conflict. It fights for purpose and direction, either in a raw, externalized battle or as an inward psychological transformation. Then we have Jupiter, who's the sage or the explorer. Jupiter governs philosophy, growth, and faith, embodying the sage's search for truth. This can be as an adventurous outward exploration or as a deep search for spiritual and mystical wisdom. And finally, we have Saturn, the father or the mentor. Saturn is the taskmaster, which teaches discipline, responsibility, and endurance. It represents authority, self-judgment, and the boundaries needed for time-tested mastery, which results in achievement. So this brings us to the 7. We've now I've presented you the 7. They are the archetypes. They all have sets of rulerships behind them. And we can, when you look around in the world around you, you connect to those rulerships in ways, but I'll explain why as we go along. So the divine order is so named because it is the Chaldean order of the planets, which is an ancient arrangement based on the relative speed of planetary motion as seen from Earth. So here we are, as it were, boots on the ground, standing on planet Earth, which is rotating on its own axis. And so when we stand on Earth and look up into the heavens, there's an ordering system of the speed and movement of the planets going away from us. And as originally described by Plotinus in The Descent of the Soul, as the soul travels down each sphere towards incarnation, the soul dons a new garment through each sphere to end up being born, which is kind of like the symbols in the chart. Of course, it's like, well, I've got my, my Mercury, my Venus, my Mars, etc. Right? So it's like each sphere is donning a garment. And traditionally, it was the order of the planets from the slowest to the fastest. That was the descent going down through the spheres. So it went Saturn first, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, incarnation. However, here we all are on Earth in our bodies right now, and we're incarnated. So we can, to understand the divine order from our earthly perspective, we go in the other direction. We go in the other way. So we're swapping the order around. So in order to really understand the divine order, we reverse it by starting at our center and moving outwards and away from our center. So we can interpret this speed of movement of the planets as the movement of consciousness. The order represents different levels of consciousness, starting with pure awareness at the center, then encountering the first sphere, which is the moon, which is the immediate flow of perception and feeling, which is the fastest. And then that moves up to Saturn, which is the outermost sphere, which is the deepest structures of the psyche, the slowest. So what is this order? Well, we start with the moon. So for modern psychological integration, rather than a strict hierarchy, the Chaldean order can be seen as a spiral because everything repeats. The moon has a monthly cycle, but so does Mercury, so does Venus, so does the sun. You know, they all have cycles. So they repeat. So it's like layers upon layers. It becomes a spiral. Can be seen as a spiral moving out of awareness at the center, moving from the immediate flow of perception, the moon, to the deepest unconscious structures, which is Saturn. So each planet moves our consciousness differently, from fast reactive awareness to slow, deep structure. So with the moon, the feeling, an archetype connected to that is the ocean, which is immediate perception. We then go to Mercury, which is thinking, which would be the trickster, which is very rapid movement. We then go to Venus, which is like a flow, which is the lover, softening consciousness. We then go to the sun, which is the presence, which is the light of being. Then we have Mars, which is action, which is the warrior, which is focusing consciousness. Then we have Jupiter, which is expansion, which is the seeker, which goes beyond the horizon. And finally, we have Saturn, the structure, which is the framework of the mind and therefore what we could call deep programming. So why is this the order? In this way, the Chaldean order makes for a modern psychological, astrological interpretation. Consciousness now moves outwards, unfolding layers of perception, experience, and understanding. Now we have a powerful way to frame the movement of consciousness, starting from the moon as the immediate receptor of sensory experience and expanding outward through the inferior planets. So we have personal mind and perception in the inferior planets. The sun, which is pure presence, and the superior planets after the sun, which is the higher mind and deep structures of reality. So in this modern psychological model, the inferior planets, which is the moon, Mercury, and Venus, move inward towards the sun. They govern immediate perception, thought, and personal values. Then we have the sun in the middle of the array, which is the center of awareness. That's the still point, the stable, ever-present witness. That's being in the light. Then we have the superior planets, which are Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which move outward from the sun. They govern will, expansion, and the deep karmic structures of consciousness. So this is the map. Now, this is what I've really been getting into for a while now. This goes alongside the birth chart. Okay, so you got your birth chart, that doesn't change. Birth charts are the most amazing, of course, the best. It's what we specialize in, it's our art. But this is a map that goes alongside it. So you kind of have it, you just know that it's there, is all you need to do. Okay, now you've hopefully seen this before. It's the Aristotelian cosmology. This is also known as the medieval model. Okay, and this was the theory and the primary belief system for over 2,000 years. Now, let's just let that settle in for a minute. 2,000 years of humanity's development, more than 2,000 years actually, because this is how the Sumerians and the Babylonians saw it as well. So you could actually make it 5,000 years. But this is how the world was seen. Okay, so the Earth was at the center, still and unmoving, around which were 7 interlocking crystalline spheres of light, making up the celestial 7 heavens above. So hopefully you can see my pointer on the screen. So planet Earth is this, anything here is below here. So you've got the 4 elements represented here. Okay, so there's Earth with where you can see a little house and some trees. Then there's water, which you can see as the horizontal lines with little rivers and lakes and ponds and things. Then you have air, which looks like sort of circulating clouds, and then fire, air turning into fire and fire on the edge. So that's the 4 elements which make up where we are. We're on earthly realm. We are constituted of the 4 elements. Let me explain more. I'll just keep going. Via this geocentric viewpoint, humanity found its link to God, the divine creator, at the very center of being. Through perceiving layers of consciousness emanating outwards, the 7 visible planets imagined as rotating spheres. So they would go out into the night and they would look up and they would imagine 7 spheres. And they were in the middle, each of them. Like we are now, you're in the middle of your own world. I'm in the middle of my world. And medieval and Renaissance life was thus lived at the center of a cosmic bubble of creation. This cosmic bubble is a model of the world, which has been described as the medieval synthesis itself. The whole organization of their theology, their science, and their history into a single complex, harmonious mental model of the universe. When the ancients looked into the night sky, they had the perception that they were looking upward and inward into a vast dance of life. They looked up, the further inward they went. Because what you're looking at here, this image, is in fact a mind map. It's a map of the imagination. This is the diagram of understanding how the mind works in the medieval world and the Renaissance, and for going right back to Babylonian. So humanity, we humans, we live in a world full of variation and change because we're below the moon, which is the world of generation, corruption, and so we're born into the world below the moon. So we're in the sublunary sphere. We are in what is called the sublunary sphere, but I'm going to explain that as we go along. And the heavens were full of song, light, and life. That's how they saw it. They looked up and they were like, it made them want to sing. Paradoxically, today, modern scientists have convinced us to view the universe as a cold expanse where life is a rare exception and it is nothing but vacuum and darkness out there. However, the medieval model shows us that it's in fact a very beautiful thing. So even though science explains the universe in terms of mathematical equations, it doesn't get us any closer to understanding what the universe is with respect to how we experience it. From on Earth, we're on Earth, we experience the universe. That's what this is all about. The medieval model shows us that with the within as well as the without, and the as above as the so below. So that's basically what this shows us. So it's a mind map, a map of the imagination, and that's the key to understanding everything that I'm going to tell you today. Yeah, this is the diagram that shows you what's within as well as without. So it's the inner space that represents the outer space, the as above, the so below, the as within, the so without. It is an image, like an imagination, an imago, an image in the mind, a picture of how we can see our place of how we center ourselves. It's a centering diagram. And what we have here is the central spherical Earth that is surrounded by a series of hollow and transparent globes. These are called the spheres or the heavens. The 7 heavens are transparent, crystalline, concentric, nested, and interlocking spheres. Fixed in each of the first 7 spheres is one luminous body, starting from the Earth, the order is the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Now, for this lecture today, because I can't fit it all in, there's so much to say, I'm only going to go the 7 heavens here. Okay, so you can see the order there. Luna, Mercury, Venus, Sun is in the middle, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Okay. Beyond the sphere of Saturn is the stellatum, to which belong all the stars that we still call the fixed stars because their positions to one another are invariable. This is then set into the firmament. Beyond the stellatum, there is a sphere called the first movable or the primum mobile, which is the outermost sphere. And I'll have more lectures. I'll be developing this as we go along. It's going to be in books 2 and 3 as well. I mean, I start to approach it in this. And so this, but books 2 and 3 on there, where I'm covering the whole thing as I go onwards. And so the primum mobile's existence was inferred to account for the motions of all the other spheres. All motion moved in order from the top to the bottom, from God the creator or the goddess the creation to the primum mobile through to the stellatum to each of the lower spheres. Whereas on Earth, we move outwards from the center moving outwards. So we're moving outwards as the creation is moving inwards. So it's a kind of in, going out like this, like an up and down motion. So there's a lot of fluidity in the understanding of the spheres, okay? But it's the fluidity is the movement of mind, okay? So the spheres also transmit their influence to the Earth. Within the medieval mind, the universe was finite, that it was a sort of perfect spherical shape containing within itself an ordered variety. Now, that is a really beautiful way. And I'm just going to say that again because that's a quote from a very famous author. Okay. It was a perfect spherical, the medieval mind, the universe was finite. It had a containment. So they looked at their world and it was contained. And it was a perfect spherical shape containing within itself an ordered variety. So it was like, oh, there's different things representing life inside the sphere that they are in. So while a modern mind might gaze into the sky and interpret vast nothingness, a person living within the Middle Ages would be able to admire it as one might admire some grand architecture. Think of the cathedrals, for example, that were, say, built in the 12th century. Think of some of them at that, that structure of, they were going, wow, yeah, they were trying to imagine their mind expanded. So it's worth noting that modern astronomy can arouse fear, bewilderment, or vagueness. Well, it does a bit, doesn't it, sometimes, Ultimately, of course, if we listen to someone like C.S. Lewis, who was, in fact, an astrologer, but that's hidden. He never told people directly he was, who said a wonderful quote, which is, the geocentric spheres present us with an object in which the mind can rest, overwhelming in its greatness, but satisfying in its harmony. I'm just going to say that again. As you look at that model, just listen to this one more time. The geocentric spheres present us with an object in which the mind can rest, overwhelming in its greatness, but satisfying in its harmony. That is just a wonderful way of really taking on a spiritual understanding of where we are and what we're at. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look at where we're getting to with this, all right? So we're going to start with geocentricity because ancient humanity was at their center and in first-person perspective. And they were basically saw the Earth as still and unmoving at the center. Okay, so planet Earth was absolutely at the center and didn't move, and everything went around it. And that's the geocentric view. So their measurement of the universe came about because they were measuring the within to the without, the as above to the so below. Geocentrism is a more accurate representation of our subjective experience from our location in the universe. It is this experience that astrology seeks to explain and that astrological charts depict. The birth moment and location is the actual birth chart, the horoscope drawing. Okay, so all right, so when we're born, astrology today, right now, birth charts are geocentric, okay, because they show you the latitude and longitude of the location of birth, and it's a geocentric viewpoint because where you're looking out from your center, and that's how charts are drawn. They come from a geocentric viewpoint, okay, and that has its origin with pre-Greek philosophy, with the Sumerians and Babylonians. They saw themselves at the center of the cosmos, and they measured the speed of the travelers, which is the planets, which is what we call transits as well. And they created the order that I've been explaining so far. But oh, sorry. And so the birth chart moves outwards. Yeah, like that's what our chart is. When you look at your chart, it's geocentric. Okay, it's drawn geocentrically. Now, Copernicus re-envisioned the structure of the universe, okay, which led to the birth of science, which has shown us that the Earth revolves around the sun, which revolves around the center of our galaxy. This is heliocentrism, which is objective. It's an objective viewpoint. It changed the world. So when Copernicus and then Galileo with the use of telescopes and then Kepler with the use of mathematical theory formulated heliocentrism, okay, during the Renaissance, they shifted the heliocentric view of the solar system to the sun at the center. Now, of course, there's no way I'm here to deny heliocentric because that's not on, right? Because we know we can look at and see how everything's going around the sun, right? But what happened during the Renaissance was the beginning, and if you look at history, you'll see how it started. But it was started to encourage the understanding that everything has to be in third-person perspective. That is to say, humanity started to see the world. They started to see themselves as separate from the world. They weren't at one with it anymore. They started to become separate. They started to move away from first-person perspective, and they moved fully and completely into third-person perspective, which meant really the strengthening and the development of the ego and the identity. Okay, because by going third-person perspective, it's then, well, I am not that world that I'm in. I'm different. I'm separate from it, which is the way we are today. This is what we're taught to do. It's what we're, but we've been taught like this for generations now, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with that because, of course, we have to have ego and identity. It's a natural part of what life is about because that's the way we're doing it. But 500 years ago, you could choose to be in the divine, and it was much more easily accessible. And then 5,000 years before that, I mean, for 5,000 years, humanity was completely first person, where they didn't really think about ego identity because they were in God's world. They were in the world of the creation, and it was manifesting and creating with them all the time because they were in it, in the heavens. They were experiencing the heavens all the time. They didn't see themselves as separate from it. So there we go, right? The new Enlightenment had an impact on astrology. The scientific viewpoint started to be developed, and we ended up in the world we are now. We have a materialistic, reductionist, and a third-person objective viewpoint. We're all told we're separate from the world. We're still taught that now. this can cause potential problems, because you look at the state of humanity now and you go, well, yeah, what's wrong? Why is everything so maladjusted? Why are we so off kilter with our harmony with nature? Why are we all separated? What's going on? It's led to environmental problems. It's led to humanist problems. And we're disenchanted because we don't have that magic that we should actually have all the time. So the result of heliocentrism, and again, I'm not here to deny it, but is that we've become more separate, because when the planets are going around us, then we're at our center. But when we're told to look up at the sun and everything's going around the sun, we go off kilter. Now, C.S. Lewis lamented that hugely. His last book he wrote before he died was called The Discarded Image. This is where a lot of my theories come from. And the discarded image is the imagination. The discarded image is the medieval model that I've been showing you. That was what was discarded. And C.S. Lewis wrote the whole Narnia series based on the medieval model. That's a secret. So did Tolkien. Wrote the Lord of the Rings, right? And with Middle Earth at the center of the rings. And what's Middle Earth is where the sun is, which is the light. There's a clue. So the Oxford professors lecturing in English literature and drama, English literature, they understood the creativity of the geocentric understanding. But they knew that the world wasn't ready for it, so they hid it in literature. Big clue. Really quite fun. So what I'm suggesting is that we now do humanocentric. So this is my idea. This is what's in my book. And you'll get it all in. It's all in here. Humanocentric. And this puts the human back at the center, but it does not dispute heliocentric theory. So both are equally valid points. And one is scientifically helpful and the other is psychologically helpful, because we see the world from our own perspective. So the planets were placed in concentric spheres where superior spheres completely envelop those below them. So Saturn's sphere envelops Jupiter's sphere. Jupiter's contains Mars's, etc., all the way down to us here on the earthly realm, which was the center that these other spheres revolved around. So the 7 spheres, if you like, are right here, like this. They're molecular, but they're also, so it's the macrocosm and the microcosm. It's there and that's here. So the envelopment created a sphere of experience in which one can be at one's center and unmoving and experience the closest as well as the farthest simultaneously and in the same space of being. So I can experience I can experience Saturn at the same time as I can experience the moon. We all know that, right? Because we study our charts and we see transits and we know we're always getting different layers of things happening all the time. Put yourself in the center with a geocentric universe. You go to the center and you start to see that movement of consciousness as going around. Okay. It's very spiritual, but it's quite enjoyable. So back to the medieval model. This is like the key diagram. And C.S. Lewis described it in the book, The Last Battle, which was the 7th book of the series, of the Narnia series. And in it, during the last battle, that all the 4 Pevensey children are shouting, further up and further in, further up and further in. And that is like saying, as above is so below, as within is so without. So in the Narnia series, they refer to it as further up is further in. So the further higher you go upwards, the further in you go, because it's a map. It's everything, and yet it's nothing. It's everything and nothing. It's inner space and outer space combined together in the same moment. So the continuous journey of spiritual growth and the pursuit of a deeper connection with the divine is found in this model. Knowing the classical model urges us to move beyond the superficial and into a realm of greater understanding. Further up refers to moving higher, both physically and spiritually, while further in signifies diving deeper into the nature of reality and one's relationship with the divine. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay.
If you're ready to take a break, if we're sort of at the halfway point.
Have we done? I mean, I haven't got a clock in front of me. Have we done the? On my phone, don't even know where it is. How many minutes have we done?
We're about 55 minutes in, so
55 minutes in. So we better have a little break at this point, because or we can jump right over the break. Depends how people are interested or not. I can start on what I call the experiments. So it's time to show you the experiments, but we can have a little break if you like. I could go get a cup of tea as well. I mean, you know, is that how we'll do it?
Well, we've got a couple of questions, clarifying questions. Let me just check. So one of our members is just asking for clarification on what you meant by nested when you were speaking earlier.
Yeah. Metaphorically, think of Matryoshka dolls. Yeah. You know, like you go, like, you know, in Russia, they have those Matryoshka dolls where you have one big one and you open it, and then there's another one exactly copied underneath. Then you open that and there's another one underneath, and they get smaller and smaller. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matryoshka dolls? Mm-hmm. Nested. One within the other. Yeah?
Yes.
So you're going in, within, but it's always the same. So you start with the big one and you open it, and then there's another one exactly the same. You open that, there's another one exactly the same. And it's great fun to do because you're going, you know, it's the nested, those are nested spheres. So that's what this is like. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And then we've got another question from the audience around some book suggestions from C.S. Lewis. Is there any in particular that you would?
Well, I'd say the discarded image.
Yeah.
The discarded image is the one, really.
Okay.
But then you can also reread the Narnia series once you understand what he was doing. You know, the Narnia series is a metaphorical journey for each planet. 7 books, 7 planets. Mm-hmm. See if you can work out which one's which.
Okay, fantastic. Before we take a break, is there anybody else who's got any questions? You're welcome to put it into the chat or take yourself off mute. And if we don't, then we might all take a 10-minute tea break. Let's make it 14 minutes and come back at 3:10 p.m. Melbourne time. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Excellent. Right. Well, hello again. And so we've got to the point where I've introduced you to the medieval model, to the mind map, if you like, of the imagination. And now I'm going to show you some actual, what I call self-evident experiments. That is to say, what you will experience when you do these is for yourself to judge. No one else is there to judge them. You've got to do them for yourself. And when you understand that, then you will see what I'm on about. So these experiments, I'm going to show you 4 experiments, and they will show you the difference between awareness and consciousness. Awareness at the center and consciousness as movements out from the center point. And when we do these, once you've done them, you'll understand Plato's Timaeus with regards to how he said man is it the perfect shape for humanity as a sphere. You'll understand Shakespeare and why he called his theatre the globe. you will understand people like Chaucer, you will understand Edmund Spencer, you will understand Milton. There's many things, all spiritual writings, in fact. People like Rumi, the poetry of Rumi. Once I show you these experiments and you see, I'm going to help you understand how to change your perception. It's very simple. So what I'm going to show you is we're going to go from the current third person perspective, and I'm going to show you how to go first person. And when you do first person, you'll then see the difference between awareness and consciousness. And when you've done that, then I can describe it to you in the birth chart, so you can see it in the birth chart, and that then fuses it all together. So this first lecture will fuse together the main theory, which is all in my book here, the first book I've written. So hopefully, I'm really hoping you'll support me by buying my book on Amazon. And I'm currently working on books 2 and 3. They're going to be published very soon, and in which I go further in and further up and further in. But I'm going more and more into this theory, and I will come to Australia, okay, to do it as an in-person workshop, because that will be a lot of fun. All right. So okay, so it's time for the experiments. Right. Now, really, you can listen to me do these, and if you feel that you don't want to do them, then you're not going to understand what's actually happening at this point, okay? But I really do feel you should do these experiments, right? Because it's going to be incredibly beneficial, and not only that, but it will show you that the soul is eternal as well. So it kind of releases you from a lot of karma by doing these. They're very powerful, and you're just going to be like, oh my goodness, and you're going to feel a lot happier for it. Okay, so all right, so what I'm actually showing you is non-duality and true nature. Okay, non-duality means that we're not separate from the world anymore, and because we're not dual, we're non-dual. That's to say, we're at one with the world, which is the medieval model. And your true nature is like what we're born with, right? So our true nature. So let's begin. So please follow these instructions. And actually, hello. So it's Kerry and
Katrina.
Thank you, Katrina. Sorry.
It's okay.
Do you want to actually if I stop the share, right, and come back to this later? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Do I become slightly bigger on the screen if we do that? Is that the general line? Yeah? And can we just try that and see what happens? Okay. Am I bigger on the screen as a result?
Yes, you are bigger on my screen. So
okay. All right then. Yeah. So that's how we're going to do this, because it's easier for you to see what I'm going to show you. All right. And then we'll go back to the lecture and I'll finish off the PowerPoint. Okay. So, all right. So this is how we're going to do this. All right. So I'm going to show you 4 experiments that I want you to really follow me, right, as I do these, because then you'll understand. All right. You can just listen to me and then you're going to be like, what's he going on about? You know, and you'll miss out. Right. If you actually do these, you're going to get something from them. I hope. Right. Some people might not get something from them, but I urge you to try them in your own time. Again, if you don't feel you get anything from the next 15 minutes, then that's fine. Just try them again in your own time until you get it. Right. But for now, just try this out. Right. So the first experiment is called pointing at your true nature. All right. When you point anywhere in the world, you're pointing at appearances. All right. So you are distant from what you are looking at, and you see things, you see objects outside of yourself. So I want you to observe what you do by directing your attention at things, by pointing at them. Okay, because we do it all the time naturally anyway. So I want you to bring the pointing finger into play. So So I want you to hold up a pointing finger like this in the space that you are in now. So you're in a room, wherever you're at, right? And I want you to hold up a pointing finger, because all the time anyway, we are always our consciousness is directed towards something. Right now, it's directed towards a screen, and you're looking at a screen on a computer, right? So you can point at that, and you can say, computer screen, right? I'm looking at that. I could also point at cup of tea. I could point at picture on the wall. I could point at ceiling fan on the ceiling. I could point at books on the shelves. And I want you to do that in your space that you're in now. So you're acknowledging with yourself that you constantly, your consciousness connects to like the archetypes and the rulerships and all the things around you in the world around you. Okay, because everything has in astrology, everything has rulership and an archetype attached to it. So you want to say, oh yeah, books. Well, that's Mercury, you know, right? You get the idea, right? And how does your consciousness move when you point to things? Because I point to a book, I read the title of a book, and immediately my consciousness starts getting images of what's in that book. I mean, that's how fast the mind moves, right? You know, all the time, right? I point at a cup of tea and I think, is it still warm? You know, whatever, right? You know, right? It's how fast does that mind move? All the time, really fast, right? So pointing outwards, right, at things, and you do it all the time anyway. I walk into a room, yeah, I walk through the doorway and suddenly the whole thing changes. I'm in another space, right? So I want you to think like that, okay? And point yourself at objects in the space you're in now, so that you're acknowledging with the pointing finger that you're sending your attention outwards to objects, right? So I'm pointing at the microphone on my desk. I'm pointing at a notebook here, okay? Just all that, okay? So I want you to do that just for a couple of minutes, just to start to work with this idea of putting your attention out there. So point at the shapes and colors in the room that you're in. And once you've done that, right, I want you to now point at your foot. So I want you to look down, stick your foot out from under the desk or whatever, and I want you to point at your foot. I'm wearing a pair of slippers and socks. I'm pointing at them now, and I can see the object and shape. There I am pointing at my foot. Then I want you to point at your knee, because you're pointing now at parts of yourself. You recognize them, you've always recognized them as you. So you're pointing at your knee. I've got, you know, I can see the curved shape of my knee. You know, now I want you to point, bring the pointing finger up to point at your torso area like this. And I can say, yeah, I'm wearing a green jumper, right? And you're pointing now like this. And now bring the pointing finger up and point like this and hold the pointing finger so it's pointing at the space that you're looking out of, where you would normally see your face. I want you to hold the pointing finger. Now, in all your instances, your attention has been directed outwards at objects. Now point at where others see your face. And what do you see? What do you see? You have to forget the computer and the camera. What do you see? Having pointed outwards, what do you now see when you point back at the space you're looking out of? What's actually happening here is you are now looking inwards, because you've turned the direction of your attention around 180 degrees from the objects out there to you, the subject, to the place that you're looking out of. Okay, so what's happening? Yeah, do you see your face? Well, do you see anything at all there? Do you see any color or shape or any movement when you point back? Because I'm holding that pointing finger, I've been pointing my direction outwards. I'm now pointing it inwards. So looking into the place where other people see my face, I don't find colors or shapes. I actually find the whole world, because I'm pointing back, and what I'm actually pointing at is a boundless capacity or awareness on this side of my pointing finger, because I'm pointing back and actually it contains the whole world. Okay, and it's boundless, it's huge. I pointed out objects all the way around. I pointed back at parts of myself, and then I point back here. And what am I pointing at? I'm pointing back at everything, because it's all there. Everything's contained within the space that I'm pointing back at. And at this point, I might even ask myself, without the help of a mirror or the help of a computer camera or anything like that, have I ever actually seen my own head? Have I? You know, well, we can say, yeah, well, I can see a bridge of my nose and I can see my, you know, but yeah, no, but think about the space within here. Have I ever seen my own head? Or when I walk through the world, am I just a container for everything? Does it just move through me, the world, the space that I'm in? Because I point back and I'm just this beautiful sense of capacity for everything. It's like it's empty, it's clear, it's transparent. It's the self-evident being awake and aware, because yes, I'm awake, I'm aware, I'm alive, very much alive, and I point back and it contains everything in it. So at the same time as everything is happening in the world, it's happening in me. So I am now seeing who I really am, because I see the boundless one at the heart of myself, the one in whom the world is happening. So the world is happening within me, but it's also outside of me. But it's also within me, because when I take my attention from outside and point it back to go inside and go, oh yeah, I'm pointing inwards, there's the world. So what do you find? Do you find that you have a crystal clear awareness when you point back at yourself? Okay. Now, having done that, I now want you to point with it, take the other finger on the other hand and point outwards like this. So you've got two-way pointing, and do that. So you're pointing inwards and outwards at the same time. Okay. Pointing back and pointing outwards. So you're pointing with one index finger pointing outwards at the world, and one with your other index finger pointing inwards towards the space that you're looking out of. The finger pointing outwards points at a scene full of countless shapes and colors. That's the world. It's very complicated out there, isn't it? You know, in Zen, they say it's the 10,000 things. There's 10,000 things happening in every single moment. You know, there's 10,000 things going on all the time. And but the more time you spend looking at it, the more there is to see. And most of it is kind of hidden, really, because it's obscured by other things in one way or the other. So, you know, I could look out the window and see the planets, yeah, and the stars, right? But there's all these things in the way of that, you know, like walls and windows and doors and things. And but basically the view is very different. So here the space that you're pointing back at is not hidden at all. And now you can see it all at once. So it's right here, and it is what one might say, it's what I am. Okay, I'm pointing at the space that I am in. So it's the part of me that I can never lose, because you can't lose your awareness. Your awareness is what you're born into. So the experience of birth, which I will talk about because that's in the chart, the birth chart is what we're born with. We're born with that. That's what we start with. We start with pure awareness. So it's pure, the moment of birth, which is what the chart captures. The moment of birth, the first breath in, the pneuma, the spirit of life, everything lights up and we're suddenly in this space, and it starts as pure awareness. And that's how it begins. And then layers of consciousness start to build as we grow into life. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but I'm doing the experiments now so you can see this space, because this is what that medieval model is. It shows you the space. Okay, so it's uncomplicated, it's transparent, it's open for you to just be with it, and it's nearer than near, because it's actually there. It's nearer than near. It's nearer, as Rumi would say, it's nearer than my breath. The space of awareness. It's just there. And it's given in its entirety. So is this who we are? You know, is this it? Well, yeah, it kind of is. Because you can now, it's a spiritual thing, right? This is a spiritual understanding. But you put the medieval model onto this and you see what I'm talking about, okay? So, so are we in fact empty of everything? and at the same time capacity for the endlessly changing view outside, room for the amazing world. Yeah, because we move around, we're constantly going third person, objects, things are like this, but actually it's just filling up the space. It just fills up this space, which is kind of really interesting, because then your spaciousness for everything. So to find out, just look, see the space is here is simpler than simple. It's just the space, and it's really it's lovely. It's quite blissful, actually. So now we're going to do the next experiment. So we've done two-way pointing, and now we're going to do what's called the closed eyes experiment. And so, having found that space, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Now, close your eyes. When I go through the experiment, I want to keep your eyes closed because it's part of the experiment. Just to gently close your eyes and just be in that space. It's the space that you go when you're asleep, right? Because you close your eyes. We sleep for how many, almost half our lives we're asleep, you know. So it's that space that we're going into. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and close your eyes, okay? And just please keep them closed for while I talk to you, okay? So with your eyes closed, who or what are you? Okay, that is to say, how big are you with your eyes closed? Yeah, how big are you? What shape are you with your eyes closed? Yeah, well, you start to find there's a lot of room in there, okay? Because it's a spaciousness. There's actually an infinite space in there, right? And so have a look to see what you find, to see where you are, keeping your eyes closed. Just look around with your eyes closed. Move that sense of what could be termed conscious. Move it around inside the aware space. How far does it go? It goes forever, because it's the eternal realm of the imagination. It's what creates the mind's eye. What creates the imagination is now this vast space. Because when our eyes are open, and keep them closed, please. When our eyes are open, we enter the world of measurement. Okay, because that's what it is, right? We enter the world of measurement, which is what the Babylonians were doing when they invented the system of mathematics. They invented measurement, which of course invented astrology. But before that, they had this infinite space of awareness. So when you dream at night, and so you enter that space as well. So you close the eyes, and this is that beautiful space that is the inner space, which is very similar to outer space. And so look for your boundaries at this point. Are there any boundaries in when there's no measurement? Ask yourself that question. Don't technically rely on memory at this point or what others say about you. Instead, rely on what's given at the present moment. So this is self-evident. You just go with what you're experiencing with your eyes closed. It's infinite in there. Yeah. And and you must rely on your direct experience of yourself. So when your eyes are closed, do you actually have a name? Can you say how old you are? Are you male or female? Are you in fact human? Keep your eyes closed, please, right, for these, because what I'm showing you is this infinite space. This is releasing, it's literally, this is like helping you to really take on a spiritual journey. And when you start combining this with astrology, this is just amazing. Okay, so all the details are in the chart, of course, because your chart has a name, your chart has an age. The chart says, are you male or female? And the chart tells you, well, you're a human because you're doing astrology. But can you, when your eyes are closed, can you define your shape on the evidence that you have? So when my eyes are closed, well, I can't actually say what shape I am anymore, right? Can you count, toes? What's that sensation that you've got when you're what we would call normally sitting in a chair or something? But what is that sensation? It's a receptivity of various sensory inputs, which is the moon. Yeah. So talking about sensory input here. So is your experience now boundless space, an infinite space of experience? Well, yes, it's full of various sensations and thoughts and feelings. So the sensations are coming in from all directions, I mean, if I rub my eyes closed, if I rub my hands together, I call them hands. I rub them together. But if I, I do this, I am experiencing sensory reception. Stuff's coming in, but it doesn't have a name anymore. It's just so. Think of this in terms of the being in the sublunar sphere. We're under the sphere of the moon, and we're in that infinite space that is also, and I'll go back to the medieval model in a bit, but this is also the primum mobile, because this is the space of creation. So we have all the things in the world around us. We've got the primum mobile, which is the movement of the creation. The outermost sphere is also the innermost. So the as above, the so below, the as within, the so without. It's all within and without at the simultaneously. So we're full of various sensations, thoughts, and feelings. So are you in fact as spacious now as when your eyes were open? Because even though your eyes are closed, do you notice that your experience is such that you cannot define yourself anymore? That's kind of a useful thing, because we're going to redefine ourselves in a minute, because in a minute, we're going to open our eyes. In fact, just around about now. But what you need to know is neither shape nor size with the eyes closed. There's space for movement, space for manifestation, if you like, space for creation. So the experience is that your formless and edgeless capacity that's filled with all kinds of things, okay, like sensations, thoughts, feelings, and sounds. With your eyes closed, of course, you could, if you listen to the birds singing in the trees outside, but it's wonderful with the eyes closed. It's just this beautiful thing that's coming in. When you open your eyes, which we're going to do in a minute, we're going to re-enter the world of measurement, and that's re-entering. That's then helps you take on the chart again, because this is the space before birth. This is the awareness, which is infinite. And when you open your eyes, you come back into the world. That's like being born. It's like the birth chart. So on the count of three, when you go 3, 2, 1, I want you to open your eyes, right? 3, 2, 1, and open your eyes. And suddenly the world comes back, and it all floods back immediately. Floods. It's just like, whoosh, wow, amazing. Well, the space that we just were exploring, is it still there? It is, isn't it? Right? But now it's filled with objects. And those objects are archetypes and rulerships and all the different things, right, that we give shape and form to, like measurement. So we measure distance, we measure transits, we measure progressions, we measure all the measurements, become part of what we are, right? So it's the mathematical. The actual origin of the word mathematics in Greek is the ordering of my own thinking. Mathematikoi means the ordering of my thinking. And I've told you today the divine order, the order of the planets, the order, So it's like the cosmos order. So you can start with the moon being the first sphere, is all that receptivity, and you give it shape and form in this outside world around us. It's very spiritual, okay? So just take your time with it. Really enjoy it, actually. Next time you go walk the dog in the park or go for a walk on the beach or whatever, just suddenly say, just be without just walk with that space and just go, goodness, I'm looking up at the heavens, and I'm part of the heavens are in me, because I've got that spaciousness now, and that's a wonderful experience. And then when you see the moon, and the sunset, sunrise, moonset, moonrise, it's all happening within. And so when you see outside of you, you see the archetypes and relationships, and you see things happen like transits. It's the transit is a moving across. The word transit is to move across something. So the movement of a planet going through is like moving through you. Okay. So it definitely rather different and quite nice to do, by the way. So, okay. So you can see that your space, you can see that when your space, is, and that's quite nice. It will bring happiness, I promise you. It's pretty special. And of course, you're gonna after this lecture, everyone will naturally flip back into third person perspective anyway. I've just shown you a bit of first person because that's how the ancients used to see the world. Okay, thousands and thousands of years of humanity, they were all doing what I've just shown you. That's how they lived even. Okay, that's how they built things, like, as you'll see, I'll explain. But what you're at your center is everything. The whole universe is at your center. Okay, and it's your inner space. And now you're aware of it. It's a wonderful realization, because there's spacious capacity at your center that is as obvious with your eyes closed as with your eyes open. Now, this can be called and termed the void, right? So I'm going to now show you how to really see the connection between awareness at center and consciousness. And then I'll relate it to something. I'll show you something else in a minute. Okay, so here we go. Now, this is the fourth experiment. And this is, I call this the all-seeing eye experiment. And it's also what I actually believe to be the third eye. Okay, the opening of the third eye. So this is what I actually think the third eye is. And you'll find this at the heart of all the religions, right? But they hide it. So I'm going to show you now something that's for the 21st century. It's for Pluto and Aquarius, and it's for the new age. All right. So it's something that is just going to be really quite special, right? So I want you to firstly acknowledge that you look at the world through two apertures, through your two eyes. You know, always, you know, it's like that. I'm in the world and I've got my two eyes. That's great, right? I look at the world like that, right? You know, two. But I want you to just bring like a pair of binoculars. Put a pair of binoculars on for a minute, okay? And still, yes, my two apertures. Yeah, I'm looking at the world through the two, right? But I want you to now just move the thumbs and fingers slightly wider, so it's like looking through a space like that. And then I want you to bring your hands a bit more, start to spread them a bit more like this. So they are now here, and you've got your hand, wave your fingers, and you can see your fingers like that, and then widen it slightly more and see the fingers there. Now, am I now looking through two eyes, or am I in fact looking through one eye? Because I've gone from two to one. I'm actually looking at the world, and I've always in fact, looked at the world through a single eye, through my third eye, because I've had the two. And if I open up the two to one, then I actually look at the world with one eye, which is my third eye. So I open the third eye. And when I open the third eye, if I bring it round the edges, my fingers here, can you see there's like a vignette round the edge, like this wonderful edge? If I bring my hands around, now I can see that there's an edge. There's an edge. If I bring my hands backwards, the edge vanishes. My hands vanish. When I pull them back, my hands vanish. Yeah, I know that they're there. So I'm conscious. I have consciousness to tell me that my hands are there. I beg your pardon. I'm aware that my hands are there, but I can't see them. So I pull my hands back and they vanish. I'm aware that they're there, but consciously I can't see them. Think Mercury, think Gemini rules the hands, right? So I'm aware that my hands are there, right? But then I bring them forward and they appear into my consciousness. They appear around the edge. And round here, follow your hands around the edge. Find them, the edge. What's this? It's a sphere. I've got the edge of my sphere all the way around. So I can just bring my hands forward. There's a sphere like that. This is the sphere. This is the Pythagoras' music of the spheres. This is Plato's Timaeus. This is Shakespeare's globe. This is Dante's paradise. This is everything, folks. You've just found your sphere. And it's like a little bit of a vignette because there's an edge to it, but you can't quite find the edge and you can't tip over. You can't go off the edge of your own world because when you move, it moves with you. So you're in orb. You're in your orb. This is your orb. And you move with it all the time, right? So I'm in orb. I'm in orb with myself at the center, the spaciousness at the center of awareness. The orb is the consciousness, the boundary of consciousness. And the medieval model has it so that Saturn and everything, all the planets are on that edge. like a fractal infinity. It's molecular, it's macrocosmic and microcosmic, because it's all there. So here's the edge, the sphere that we're in. Okay. And it's like the opening of the third eye, because now you open a window and all the gods can flow in. Right. So now you can start talking to your planets more, because that what I'm showing you is what Jung was going in Jungian psychology. Okay. Jung talks about the unconscious. Well, the unconscious is everything that we can't see. Right. But when it appears around the edge, like my hand's appearing around, you find the edge. So the void, yeah, is that space behind. Yeah. Behind all is that space, it's the infinite space, which is also with the eyes closed, is that huge space out of which things arise. Stuff's arising all the time. So the gods speak to you through your edge. Now that's how the ancient civilizations used to do it. And that's how they did it for thousands of years. And it was only because the development of heliocentrism and the complete adherence to the third person perspective that we suddenly all went third person perspective. But now in the 21st century, we look at the world around us and we go, oh my God, what's going on? Why does the world seem to be falling? Well, we just need to rediscover our first person awareness, which is this space. So you've just got the spiritual awakening that everyone's been waiting for, really. But from an astrological point of view, I'm showing you the ancients model. So you're seeing the medieval model and you're seeing that orb, the seven heavens in your orb, and which transits move through. I mean, here's the thing. I sit in my car, I'm driving along, right? Am I going anywhere? I'm sat in a seat and the world is in fact flowing through me. The world flows through my sphere. Everything's flowing through me. I go on a subway in a big city. I'll go onto the subway and I'll climb on and I sit in a chair in the carriage and the doors close and the train leaves, but I'm sat in a chair. I'm sat on the subway or on a bus. I'm sat on the bus. Am I going anywhere? No, the world is coming to me. Because when I find my center point, my awareness at center, the world just starts moving and flowing through me, which is a transit. Because in astrology, we talk about transits and we say, oh, yes, I'm getting a really bad Saturn transit. But is Saturn standing there in the space in front of me, or is it just a feeling? So what is a transit? It's moving through me. So take the medieval model, and Saturn's right there. All the spheres are there, but then Saturn starts to, because of the way things are. So it's part of the mystery. Everything's still a mystery. I'm not here to solve anything, because life is a mystery. It's the great ineffable, isn't it? It's like, so I have to be humble to everything. It's just like, yeah, okay, there we go. See what you think of it. It's kind of fun. But I will show you the void quite nicely with this, which is Shiva. You've probably all seen this. So this is Hinduism. This is the great Shiva, the dancing Nataraj. And in that the science reactor CERN in Switzerland, they have a huge statue of Shiva outside. Yeah. So this is Shiva, the dancing Nataraj. So he's dancing, he's creating the world at the same time, simultaneously as destroying the world. But he's standing inside a fiery circle, right? You can see the fiery circle. Yeah. It's like the four elements. Yeah. And what I've just shown you is that edge, right? And that's the Shiva's, if you like, in Hinduism, it's Shiva's edge. If you turn Shiva, he's in front of it, like that. Yeah. So he's actually in front of it. He's not in the void. He's in front of the void. So he's living in his third person perspective, right? But he has his first person awareness right there on the edge. Nataraj. Pretty cool, right? I like that. I think that's a very good way of describing it. But also, if you go into a Christian church and you look at the stained glass windows and you see all the saints and they all have that halo around them, well, what's a halo? It's the orb I've just shown you. If you look at Buddha, pictures of Buddha, and he has the halo, what's the halo? You've now got the halo. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you the halo for astrology. So I'm bringing astrology and connecting it to the organized religions in the way that we weren't shown before. Because heliocentricity astrology almost got wiped out by heliocentricity. Think about it, right? For 200 years, astrology was almost squashed. Yeah, I mean, virtually non-existent. And then we rebuilt it. And I've got nothing against heliocentricity, don't get me wrong here. But then we rebuilt it on the rubble of what had been destroyed. So that's why we then created sun sign astrology and all these sort of, we forgot about the medieval model. We completely forgot about it. It was the discarded image. And people, it's still hidden stuff, but I'm showing you because astrologers need this. I actually believe astrology really needs this right now because of AI, right? AI is going to take it all out of us. We aren't going to we're not going to, it's going to be so clever with the way it summarizes things very soon. So we have to find our spiritual foundation. We have to find our spiritual foundation with astrology. I mean, it's that important, So I hope that you sort of get what I'm going on about, basically. Right. So I'm going to share the screen again now. Can someone tell me if you're seeing the screen? Yeah?
Yes.
And yeah, okay, thank you. All right. So so there's just an example of ripples of water. Quite nice, but now I'm going to show you the only slide I put up today, which links the sphere to the consciousness. Here it is. It's the zodiac at Dendera. Okay. Now, what are they all doing there? They're doing this. They're holding their hands up, supporting a great big sphere. And inside that sphere is outer space, because it's all the constellations. So they're holding up a sphere. Can you see it with their arms extended out? They're holding up this great big sphere, the orb. They're holding up the orb of the world. And they're basically saying, that's it, folks. There it is. Symbolically speaking, carved into stone. And it's the zodiac at Dendera. So the Egyptians were saying, we do our astrology and we do it with the orb, with like that. We do it like this. Okay? Because that's actually how to do it. And as you can see there, the whole world is inside it. How about that? So that's the only one I've got to show you today, because I could do a whole lecture on this. I mean, you just, because in Australia, of course, you can look at Aboriginal art. Aboriginal art is exactly orb. I mean, it's just amazing. All those dot patterns and things. And how they do their song lines and how they do everything that they do. So, I mean, it's just but this is the orb, okay? And it starts to make sense when you think about how the gods and goddesses and how the ancient civilizations used to talk to their gods and goddesses, and that's how to talk to the planets. So you're going to have far more control of how you talk to your planets, and you'll get a lot wiser. The insights you get invaluable. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's amazing. And I still pore over my charts and watch my transits every day and my progressions and everything. It's all still happening within me, but now I see it from a slightly different perspective. And it's I'm having to tell you what my own experience is, otherwise I wouldn't be giving this a lecture, So, okay. Anyway, how to use the divine order with your clients? Well, or just with your mates, just talking to people about it, because this is the next stage, right? firstly, primary and secondary motion. We've got to talk about that because that's how you see it in the chart. Okay. So I talked about primary motion earlier as being the rotation of this planet on its own axis, right? And the primary motion is the 4 angles and the 12 houses. So when we're born and the chart is created, it's the first breath, it's the pneuma or the spirit of life, and everything literally lights up because before birth, it was the infinite space. And then the soul drops down through the spheres, incarnates into the sublunary sphere, the moon acting as the funnel, as the mother. The moon acts as the funnel and births people into the sublunary realm. So we come into the space we are in now, the earthly realm, where we're constituted of 4 elements. And this is the realm of generation, corruption, as the ancients used to call it. So we're in that realm in which we are born, we grow up, we exist, and then we die. But now you've seen that you're eternal. I've just shown you that. I mean, I keep saying I. I mean, it's because it all sounds very egoistical, but it's not meant to be. It's just you've now discovered that you have an eternal soul, yeah, which is what the chart is as well, because it's like incarnation after incarnation after incarnation, but you've now covered the space that you're in, which is the sublunary sphere. We're under the influence of the moon and all the other planets, but the other spheres and the prima mobile and the firmament and all the other stars, they are perfect and unchanging, but the moon is ever changing, which is why her face constantly changes in her cycle. Like the moon's never the same, it changes all the time. And then the moon is the barrier to the sublunary sphere where we are. And so we have the corporeal existence made up of the 4 elements, or the table of elements, if you want to get scientific, the periodic table of elements. Here we are in it, we're in it, and we're of it, and we're made of it, created in the earthly realm of corporeal materialism and form, living our lives. But the moment of birth is being on earth. So we land on earth with the primary motion. So we land into primary motion. We're entering into primary motion. So standing on earth, and we're part of that rotation, which is why we get night and day and night and day and night and day, but the heavens are always blue and the sun never goes out. And the 4 angles, which are our location, and the 12 houses, which are the experiences in which we encounter things, it shows the movements, because so the planets move in 2 distinct ways. Okay, so primary motion demonstrates movement through the sky. Secondary motion denotes the movement through space. So primary motion is clockwise. As it moves, it's going like the direction as the ascendant is always rising. So the 4 angles, ascendant, descendant, that horizontal axis is always rising as it sets on the other side. And the midheaven is always culminating at the top. So there's a constant primary motion that rises up. The ascendant is rising. But as it moves, our consciousness moves. So everything arises in our consciousness. If you sat on a meditation cushion, like a very good, meditator, and you sat facing eastwards and looked at the horizon for 24 hours of meditation with your eyes open, well, you'd see everything arising in the east, sunrise, and everything else rising up in the east in 24 hours. It would go nut. It would start with start in the morning. Everything rises up, it moves up over the top, and then it descends down the back, and then it returns again, and so forth. Did you move? No, you sat on a cushion. So, and you were aware of sitting on a cushion, but what actually moved was your consciousness. because you were eternal, sitting in your space. And then what moved around you as you sat on your cushion looking at the eastern horizon, you saw all these things appearing and moving up and around the top and down the other side. But so you sat in awareness whilst your consciousness moved around you. So, and that is the secondary motion, because the primary motion is sitting there and not moving, because then you're sitting on the rotation of Earth. The secondary motion is then the counterclockwise movement of the planets moving in the other direction around the ecliptic. From our perspective on Earth, we look up and we see the ecliptic and the path of the sun through the 12 zodiac signs. And we say, oh yeah, and that's the counterclockwise motion. So in the 6th century, Chalcidius translated Plato's Timaeus from Greek into Latin. And Chalcidius had a quote that was, God gave mankind eyes to see so that he could observe the wheeling movements of the mind. Which is a lovely quote when you think about it. That is really deep and very profound and philosophical. The wheeling movements of the mind is primary and secondary motion, right? So, and we got given the eyes to see the wheeling movements of mind. Far out, right? I mean, honestly, it's just wonderful, but at the same time, wonderful. I mean, and enlightening even, because it's just like, God, this, you know. Yeah, I get it, right? I'm in primary motion all the time, but then I look out and I see secondary motion occurring. And the 4 angles of my location, the ascendant, descendant, MC and IC, point out to the places on the ecliptic, creating the angles, because they point to degrees in the zodiac and the house cusps and so forth. But everything is arising in my consciousness, because of course there are things going on all the time. Right now the ascendant is arising. Right now it's always happening. So the 2 movements are also known as the diurnal movement and the zodiacal movement. Diurnal is day night, primary motion. Zodiacal is counterclockwise, secondary motion, planets on the ecliptic. So the primary motion, the diurnal motion, is the basic source of our awareness. We're born into it. We're in it. We're in it. We're aware and we're in it, in the awareness of primary motion. Secondary motion or zodiacal motion is the basic source of our consciousness. Okay, so that's all the transits that are going on, moon movements and everything else, because that's the movement of the planets, and it's secondary because it's counterclockwise to the movement of planet Earth. So a chart looks a little like 2 wheeling types of cogs or cosmos mechanics, as diagrammatically one appears to rotate within the other. All the planets, including the sun, rise in the east in the northern hemisphere, and this is the clockwise motion. All planets from our perspective on Earth are going around the ecliptic in a counterclockwise motion. So that Chalcidius quote one more time: the Creator gave mankind eyes to see so that we could observe the wheeling movements of the mind. Beautiful. Okay, how does it relate to the birth chart? I've sort of started explaining this already, but I'm just going to go through it because I'm going a bit off tangent here, but stick with it. Primary motion is directly associated to the first breath taken at the birth moment, because primary motion is in the chart represented as 4 angles and 12 houses. That's why the minute of birth is most important. Can you have an accurate birth time? Yeah. The 4 angles of the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and nadir show the rotation of our planet Earth as it rotates about its own axis once in 24 hours. The 4 angles also give us the latitude and longitude location of our birth, and you follow those angles into the point at the center of the chart, and that is the longitude and longitude point of birth, the location of birth. The birth moment is when spirit, having manifested soul as it descended through the spheres, is then born through the moon into and enters into the sublunary sphere in a physical corporeal form. This is the ancients' way of seeing the world. This is how they used to see it for thousands of years. As the infant is born out of the mother and enters into this world, what does it experience first? Well, I postulate that it has no understanding of where it is or what it is because consciousness has yet to be formed. However, the infant is alive and it's breathing. It's safe to say that it has awareness, a very pure form of awareness, which is the act of being alive. So, when we cast the natal chart based on the location of birth and on the timing of the first breath, what are we actually doing? We are recording the very first moment of awareness of the individual. From this point forward, we are going to be using all the techniques of astrology, the mapping of the individual's life journey, their evolution, and their self-understanding, and everything that we do today with astrology. But we are starting with the initial state of awareness. And once that state has been established, an individual has been born and has a chart that it can call its own. Consciousness is going to start growing and being created out of the state of pure awareness. So, the moment that the individual becomes self-aware is the moment that the 4 angles of the chart are created, and those 4 angles point into the ecliptic. Furthermore, the 4 angles are also creating the 12 houses or the 12 places, which are the encasement around the individual's awareness. So the primary motion of the earth as the individual is born into earth and becomes a part of earth is shown in the chart as primary motion, awareness. Primary motion, the movement of this planet that we exist upon, is the movement of our awareness, because without the planet, we would not have awareness, we would not be alive. This is the diurnal motion of the primary emotion, whether it is light or dark at the time of birth, is the key to how the individual's life can be manifest. This is sect, a little bit about sect, which is definitely an area I'm going to explore more, but I'm sort of, there's so much you can correlate all traditional astrology with this. So, I mean, maybe I spoke too early, eh? But because everyone would be like, oh, anyway, whatever. But and I hope you're enjoying this. So, okay, so the 4 angles and the 12 houses are now moving out of the earth into the space around the earth and further outwards into the area of the ecliptic where we have the zodiacal signs. The ecliptic is the band in which all the other planets are moving through in a different direction to the primary motion. It is all the movement of the other planets that are creating the movement of time, which is the development of consciousness. So secondary motion is the development of consciousness and time. That's the transits. So we've got the chart as the basic chart, and then it's just transits and progressions take over from there, don't they? You've got the chart, stays the same, and then everything's moving. That's consciousness developing, layer upon layer upon layer, day upon day upon day. So together, primary motion and secondary motion make up the complete natal chart. I know this is from an Australian astrologer, this diagram, but I had to use it because I'm a graphic designer. So thank you, whoever this image is from. This is the Chaldean order. Okay, so from the slowest moving planet Saturn to the fastest moving planet, the Moon, the soul descends through the spheres and enters on Earth, becomes part of Earth. Okay, and then when we're on Earth, we then look outwards to see our development going the other direction. So we came in this way and then we go out that way in order to understand ourselves. So we're going in and out. Once we come in order to go back out. And that's the life. So this is one of the most simplest systems of Fidaria. This is how to make the divine order work and how to use it with clients, how to talk about it with your friends, how to make it a thing. It's Fidaria, Okay, so this is a very simple Fidaria. It's the 7 Ages of Man. That's why I used that Shakespeare quote earlier in the lecture. It aligns very well with the Chaldean order of the planets, and it shows a path of personal self-development through one's lifetime. This is the path of getting to know oneself. This is how you know yourself. It's that form of Time Lord system. So it's not so much predictive as a path by which one is growing into self-knowledge and wisdom. Okay? So when we're born, the first 4 years, is the moon, and then we go Mercury, and then we go Venus, and then we go Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and back to the moon, because it's cyclical. So, but you probably know this quite well, the 7 Ages of Man. You know what I'm talking about. This is a fairly well-known Fidaria, okay? But this is how I'm using the divine order. So I talk about it in here because this is the basic form of astrotherapy. This is how to talk to your gods and goddesses, right? So this is the theory I've got that I'm developing. And it's just like a modern astropsychotherapy, okay? So the divine order in 7 spheres. So this is all about getting to know yourself as you grow into your life. So this is the order again. Start with the moon, which is feelings, which moves to Mercury, which is logic, which moves to Venus, which is relationships, which moves to the sun, which is the center and the light of everything. Then we move to Mars, which is the actions, Jupiter, the growth, and Saturn, which is the law of life. And it's all nested. This is nested, like Matryoshka dolls. This is the nested concentric spheres. So we're going to start with the moon, which is our feelings. So the moon is the raw intake of awareness. Okay, it's the first stage, right? The immediate perception of reality through the senses, through the 5 senses, before the mind creates meaning. It is where consciousness moves the fastest, reacting instantly, absorbing experience before the rational mind can process it. I go into the kitchen, I touch a hot stove, and I go, ow. My hand moves back immediately because I get a sensory reaction. Okay? That's how fast the moon is, reactions and responses. All right? So it's the flow of perception. It's the immediate experience or the sensor, which is the feelings before thoughts. So the moon is feelings before thoughts. And we get all that in the first 4 years, right? So you look at the chart and you can say, you look at the condition of the planet in the chart. And you ask the client about their first 4 years. What was it like? How did it go for you? Have you got any memories of that time? Any specific stories or things that you remember? And you look at the condition of the chart, asking them about their feelings. So because the moon is the ruler of feelings and therefore memories as well, because it's a memory-based thing, the ever-changing movement of awareness tied to feeling, intuition, and subconscious reactions. So it moves the mind like a shifting tide, like the feeling of being pulled by mood, pulled by memory, or the environment without technically thinking about it. So it's kind of intuitive. It's like water that shifts effortlessly between emotions, impressions, and memory. So in a way, the psychological experience is the awareness absorbing its surroundings, feeling its way through life, and responding instinctively. And then the moon being the fastest moving of the planetary bodies, it absorbs experience before the rational mind can engage with it. So it's pure receptivity. The moon is very receptive. But you think about that first 4 years of life. There you are, swaddled most of the time, being given everything that you need, hopefully, nurtured, looked after, cared for. And you just in that first 4 years, that's a very key, vital stage for future happiness, is that technically goes well, And So that what it represents in consciousness is the direct experience of sensation, emotions, and instinct. It's the unfiltered present moment before interpretation of anything else. Because you see, the next sphere out, we'll go to the next sphere next, you see, the movement of awareness that flows with the tides of life. So then we go, okay, so we're getting all that stuff coming in. Now, what do we do with the stuff coming in? We go to Mercury. So Mercury moves the consciousness by linking ideas, jumping between perspectives, and dissolving fixed mental patterns. It's where consciousness splits into subject and object. The moment experience becomes thought. So touch the hot stove, I go, ow, oh my God, what have I got to do? Well, I've got to go and run it under cold water. I've got to do something with it now, so it's you're moving into the Mercury to make a decision to do something. So Mercury is thought and communication. It's the interpreter, and it represents thought, language, and perception. The mind is beginning to make sense of what it's perceived. So it's the rapid movement of ideas, words, and connections. It's a quick darting motion, like the mind jumping between thoughts, forming insights, creating categories of meaning. It's the speed of conversation. It's the understanding of symbols. It's the curiosity of discovery. It's the naming of experience, turning raw sensations into words and symbols. So the moon does the first stage, and then Mercury gives it a name. So it objectifies it. The dualistic nature of the mind, this versus that, past versus future, the ability to shift perspectives, to analyze, and to question. Once we've been through Mercury, we then enter Venus. And these three are the inferior planets. Okay? So Venus is the harmonizer. And what then happens is basically Venus moves consciousness into preference and desire, shaping how we emotionally engage with the world. Venus moves consciousness through attraction, where the mind flows when it is not resisting or forcing. So I burnt my hand on the stove and went, ow. Mercury made me have a decision what I'm going to do with that. And then from the decision, what do I prefer to do with it? Shall I put some bones? What you get the idea? I put something on it, wrap it with a plaster, or whatever, right? What I'm trying to say is you just get the idea of moving the Venus, you move outwards, you're moving out of the spheres all the time. And so it's the emotional coloring of thought. After Mercury categorizes and names, Venus attaches the value, what's pleasant, what is beautiful, what is meaningful. So it's the ruler of love and beauty. It's the unifying movement of consciousness where awareness seeks the harmony, the pleasure, and the connection of something. Venus moves the mind in like a gentle wave, right? So it's like the feeling of being drawn towards something beautiful, or the ease of slipping into a state of enjoyment. It's like a gentle current. So I'm thinking spheres, think of ripples, think of the movement of the mind again, the movement of consciousness. Says Venus, I think I'll go towards that. It's like having a buffet or something in front of you. It's like, what should I have? Oh, I could have a bit of this, a bit of that. So it's like it's going to the things. You're guiding your attention to what feels good, what you like, what harmonizes with, and what creates balance in life. Psychological experience is falling into the flow, it's falling into the flow of life, the effortless merging of awareness with an experience like music or art or the love of relating. So it's the emotional and aesthetic filter. It's what we're drawn to and what we find meaningful. It's the movement of consciousness into connection and desire and pleasure. And it's the ability to soften the mind's analysis of Mercury, because Mercury can be quite harsh in its analysis, and it tends to bring the harshness of analysis into the flow of experience. Okay, so that's Venus. And then we get to the sun. And the sun is the anchor of the awareness. It's right at the center. So it's the stable self that observes all the inner and outer experiences. The sun is where the mind rests in itself. It's a pure, stable, conscious presence, which is why it's the middle earth, if you like, the middle of the array of 7. And so it's the still point of awareness, and simultaneously the center of awareness in the light. It's the pure presence of being. So it's the center of consciousness. The sun is not the movement, it's the awareness behind all the movement. It does not chase thoughts like Mercury. It doesn't attach value like Venus, and it doesn't react like the moon. It simply is. So what it represents is the witnessing self, the unchanging presence behind experience. It's the point of stillness around which thoughts, desires, and perceptions orbit. The source of clarity and the authentic being. It doesn't technically move the mind as much. It's the presence that holds all the movement, because it's in the middle of the inferior planets and the superior planets. So it's that point of being at the center. It's a different type of center. It's being in the light, which is why when you look at the Thema Mundi, and here's another direction for a traditional astrology, but you look at the Thema Mundi chart, the origin of the world, and you have the 2 lights, moon and the sun, and the ascendant is the moon. The ascendant's in Cancer, 15 degrees Cancer, and the moon's in the first house, because that's the first thing. And the 2 lights are the 2 eyes, aren't they? So the Thema Mundi chart is the creation chart, the creation of the world. And I'm saying this now because I've got to, because otherwise someone else will get it. You know, I'll have all the other astrologers going, "What's this?" Well, I'll tell you, right? Thema Mundi is the origins of the world, is the origins of light. And today I showed you the experiment where when you closed your eyes, you were the infinite space. And then I said, 3, 2, 1, open your eyes. And everything went poof. And the world was created again. That's the Thema Mundi. The Thema Mundi chart is the opening of the eyes. It's like the creation of the world, because then you create everything. Goes bing when you open your eyes. And everything takes its form again. The form and structure of consciousness comes out from the space here, right? So the Thema Mundi with the ascendant in Cancer and the moon in the first house is like the lights. And in astrology, the 7 planets rule the 7 things, don't they? So you've got moon is the, hang on a minute, let me get this right. Oh God, hang on. Sun is the right eye, moon is the left eye, I believe. So there you've got the sun and, so you've got the moon in Cancer, sun in Leo, the 2 lights, and everything else stretches out from them. So you've got then the Mercury flanking it, the Venus flanking it, the Mars, the Jupiter, and the Saturn. Yeah. So it's the Thema Mundi of light moving around that orb of experience. Around the orb is the Thema Mundi. Okay. So that's I had to get that in there because it's important to get it in there, isn't it? At this stage, otherwise, but basically there it is. Okay. So yeah. So the sun at the center is the source of clarity and the authentic being, and it's the seat of the awareness. It's the I am. Yeah. It is actually kind of very connected to the third person perspective, because you have to be an I am, you have to kind of be third person. So the sun sits in the middle because it's the inferior planets moved us away from awareness to the light at the center, the sun being the I am, and then the superior planets take it further. So yeah, so it's this it's the I am principle, if you like, or the unchanging center of the being. So it's like a steady radiance, like the constant presence behind everything else, behind all the thoughts and the experiences. And of course, when you're in the light and you're in the present moment, you're existing in the present moment. Because you do third person, you can still very much exist in the present moment. It's very important to, you combine the two together. It's like a sort of combination of just being in your state, being happy to be in yourself, really. So that's the sun. Then we get to the first superior planet. So now we've gone past the sun and we're going to a different type of order of planets. The inferior planets are between Earth, where we are. You have Moon, Mercury, Venus, and then we have the sun in the middle, and then we've got Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and it's a different type of movement. So Mars is the first planet that shows force of will and direction. And Mars moves consciousness by giving it a target or a goal, something to fight for, something to pursue. So Mars moves consciousness from passive witnessing into active engagement. It's the moment we commit to a direction. So the sun was being all kind of like at it, being itself, just being its presence. But Mars then says, yeah, go on, push forwards, go and do something. So the first outward movement from the center, if the sun is stillness, Mars is the first movement outward. It's attention turning towards a goal, a direction, or a challenge. What it represents is that focus of the will to act, to assert, and to push forwards. It's the cutting away of distractions. It's choosing one thing over another. It's the emergence of personal power and confrontation with obstacles. How it moves the mind is like a sword cutting through fog. It's focusing the awareness towards a single point of action. So it's the active mind, it's directed focus, it's the warrior energy, if you like, of the psyche. And it's about having, you know, quite quick bursts of energy sometimes, maybe sustained, but it's energetic and moving forwards. It's determination, it's motivation, potentially it's anger, you know, that can arise when one's path is not, you know, if your Mars gets angry, it's not allowed to move forwards. And so the shift from so it's just about choosing a direction or facing obstacles, if you like. And then we get to Jupiter, and Jupiter is the it moves consciousness by going beyond structure, as it were. Saturn is actually structure, but Jupiter and Saturn are like a pair. You know, it's kind of like a sort of yin yang kind of thing going on there. So they say, yeah, Jupiter grows and expands and Saturn contracts and limits, but Jupiter can go beyond Saturn, kind of goes beyond it to come back to it, you know, opening to possibilities and new ways of seeing the world. So Jupiter moves consciousness towards expansion, beyond personal desire into the realm of meaning and cosmic vision. So in a way, we get this steady, expansive movement, like how we learn over time or experience the aha moment, which shifts perspective. It's the seeker's mind, which questions, learns, and expands beyond limitations. And it's the, you know, what does it mean? It's a sort of philosophical expansion. And in a way, it's seeking purpose, it's seeking the truth. It's philosophy, actually, is Jupiter. And it's the realization as well, is very Jupiterian. So you see the world with new meaning, or you're breaking free from past limitations. And then we get to Saturn, and Saturn is the boundary, and it moves consciousness towards self-mastery and integration. So it's the realization that limitations are teachers and structure is necessary for wisdom. And this is the level where things become very fixed. It's quite difficult to really suss Saturn out because it's kind of like an unconscious programming. It's the deep foundations of how we think and perceive reality. We just have to work at it. That's the Saturn thing, is you work at it, and as the older we get, the easier it becomes to understand it. And because it's at the boundary, it's the limits, and so it's structure and time and karmic patterning, and it's the consolidation of consciousness as form. So that's why we get older with Saturn takes control, because we're in form, in our physical form, and the consolidation of that consciousness gets us to become older and older and older. So it's the slowest and the deepest layer. Saturn is the furthest planet in the Chaldean order because it represents the outermost structure of thought, reality, and limitation. So it's the final layer of the mind. It's deeply ingrained belief systems, karma, and time-bound structures. the limits of perception, the rules we live by, the walls that we can potentially run into. It's self-judgment. Oh, I can't do this. Oh God, I can't do that. Oh, self-judgment is Saturn, you know. So, and we all know this, you know, but it's consciousness solidifying into form, into a sense of identity, and into a structure of time measurement. And so it's very slow, it's difficult to change, and yet it holds it all together. So it represents the deepest conditioning of existence, if you like, the ancestral memory, the karmic patterns, and the structures that consciousness is born into. So family, society, the body, all these different things are very Saturn ruled. It's quite slow, it's quite heavy, the mind with Saturn, and Saturn's focused on the mind, you know. You have to look at the chart, of course, the condition of Saturn. So I'm telling all these things with the idea of the condition in the chart. And then you look at the Fidaria with the 7 ages and where one is at. And then I'm going to now show you exactly how to talk to the gods, each god in turn. So I'm giving you some ideas here. And psychologically with Saturn, we're being shaped by reality, authority, and responsibility. That's basically a sort of Saturnian thing. But now, see the spheres as frequency or movement, you know. The kind of, that image there is quite nice. You can see Earth at the center. They're interlaced, so it's like an interlacing, you know. And so as you can see, consciousness is like this pulsing wave. Think of the medieval model again, that moves like the flow of mind, like a river or the wind. You know, if you think of the elemental experiences of movement, consciousness moves inward through the inferior planets. It gathers sensory experience, language, and meaning. It centers in stillness at the sun, which is the pure presence. And this is the no dividing line. That's this experiment. The sun is there. The sun is in the middle, right? It's in the middle because it's in the light. The sun is the star. Everything else is a reflection of the star. Everything else is a reflection. The moon is, and all the other planets. And in fact, actually, even the firmament is a reflection of the sun. Think about it, because it's you know, the heavenly light is blue. And so there's, when in the light, all is one, the non-duality and the true nature. Consciousness moves outward through the superior planets, engaging the world, expanding and structuring reality. This pulsing movement is the rhythm of consciousness itself. So it's a dance between stillness and motion, between perception and creation. At the center, of course, and not moving, is the awareness. So, which always can bring up the question is, are we moving through the world, or is the world moving through us? Which I explained earlier with the idea of transits. So now I'm going to give you an example of how the divine order works in the world around us. Now, this is kind of like a sort of like a revelation-y thing. And when the more you think about it, the more you'll see it. Okay, so this is just one basic example. I've got a few more in my book, you know, and it's an ongoing, as I said, it's an ongoing exploration and discovery and understanding it. But I'm going to show you the divine order in an example. And we're going to go buying a car. Okay, so here we go, right? So step one of buying a car is the moon. All right, so I feel I need a new car. Think of the words. I feel I need a new car. I visualize what I want, the model, the color, the size, the shape. Step two, Mercury. I calculate my budget and then I go shopping, exchanging money for the object. Step three, Venus. I consider it an object of beauty. I attach new values to myself because of it. I spend more money to make it look good. I wonder if others will be attracted to me because of it. I look good driving around with the windows down, and it plays music. Step four is the sun. My ego identity and personality development are affected. I am growing in selfhood because of it. It is becoming an extension of my individual self. Step 5, Mars. I can drive it fast. I can accelerate. I can race it, putting the pedal to the metal. I can overtake. And I am my own boy racer. Step 6 is Jupiter. I can take it long distances, like a chariot, to carry myself around. I can explore the distant horizon. I can make space around me. Step 7, Saturn. There are laws to follow. I must obey authority to allow it to run. I must maintain and fix it over time. It will inevitably get old. The divine order, buying a car. And you can do that with anything, folks. Just contemplate. It's a contemplation exercise. But think about that. It's really quite wonderful. Just think about the world around you and everything that occurs. And to see that, okay? Now, how do you talk to your gods, right? How do we talk to these 7? Yeah. There's an ancient system that a lot of people don't use very much, actually. And it's the planetary days and the planetary hours. The planetary hours. So on Monday, it's Lundi, with the moon day. Tuesday is Mardi, or Mars day. Wednesday is Mercredi, Mercury day. Thursday is Jupiter, Jeudi. Friday is Venus, Vendredi. Saturday is Saturn day. And Sunday is the Sun day. So there you have the 7 planets as days. That's another cosmic ordering system that is largely forgotten by humanity. We rush around. We're always human doings. Yeah. We don't do human being very much. You see, we do human doing an awful lot. And human doings, just take those as the days of the week. Yeah. And they don't think about the hidden planetary order in there, but there is a hidden planetary order. And that is the planetary hours, which constantly cycle through the Chaldean order. Okay. So the planetary day, it's called the planetary day because at the dawn on a Monday is moon hour first. At dawn on the Tuesday, it's Mars hour when the sun rises. Primary motion. So it's to do with light and primary motion and all these different things. Okay, but it's basically the ordering of time. And the hours, right, is when you talk to your gods. So the whole essence of what I've been showing you and all this is to say, you've got a client and you're like, well, it's all in my book, by the way. You please do buy my book, okay? Because I can't fit it all into one lecture. I just can't, right? I can't, can I? It's been impossible to fit it all in. But it's given you, there's a lot in here that's not in the lecture. So to do astrotherapy, to talk to your planets, you choose the planetary hour. And then you can think about what that planet is in your chart. And that's how to perfect your relationship to your planets. And that's it. So use the planetary hours to talk to your gods. That's why there are sacred moments in the temples in ancient Greece and the Roman temples and things. They would have moments when they would all gather to talk to the gods. Because, there's times to talk to your gods and the goddesses. So if you really want to get powerful results on understanding yourself better, work out your planetary hours and then work out when to talk to the sun, when to talk. And that's when you can do astrotherapy on yourself, because then you can say, well, I'm thinking about all this and I need to, now from an astrological perspective, you could show your client when to work with their planets. Okay. And that is pretty amazing thing to do. So I think it's time to summarize, because I think I've probably told you a lot this evening, or yeah, this afternoon. So the journey we took today was we went through the 7 planets. We looked at the original order, which is geocentric. We introduced the idea of the Renaissance and the heliocentric. It has benefits, but it has maybe some problems, which was especially for astrology, because the adoption of the heliocentric system virtually crushed astrology for 200 years. We had to struggle back to rebuild it. So by understanding the geocentric system, we can move to the humanocentric system, which is the new way of looking at things. The humanocentric means human at the center, the world going around it at like 7 spheres. Is the reintroduction of the medieval model, whilst completely understanding that science is correct. Science is correct. We are going around the sun, of course. But in each of our worlds, when you find the difference between awareness and consciousness, then you can go humanocentric, which is very Pluto and Aquarius. Okay. And I showed you some demonstrations of experiments to help you find that. And briefly, we started to incorporate it into the idea of incorporating it into practice. And so it's a discovery of how to go about doing that. So the conclusion is to say, to become more aware of the divine order, encourage humanocentricity, integrate into your astrological practice. You can help your clients understand the essence of the planets. The sequencing is according to the divine order, and recommend planetary days and hours, because that's the magical portals of windows, the windows of time, if you like. My book is called The Divine Order. It's available via my website. If you want a signed copy, I'll post it to you in Australia, or you can get it on Amazon. And so just type in my name, Julian Venables, The Divine Order, and you'll see it there. If anybody would like to buy a copy of my book on Amazon, and if you leave me a review and then tell me you left a review, so if you buy a book on Amazon, leave a review, I will give you a free 30-minute reading on Zoom. That's a pretty good offer, I think. So what's next is to go beyond humanocentricity. I want to plan to do in-person workshops, because there's a whole bunch more to show you. There are 2 new books on the way, so they're going to be this year. And visit my website. I do a free newsletter, by the way. I do a thing called the Weekly Almanac. So please visit londonastrologer.co.uk. Scroll down the front page until you get to the email sign-up box. Put your email in there, and then you'll receive an almanac every week that I do. And as I said, yeah, if you please support me by buying my book on Amazon or buying a copy from my website, leave a review, and I will give you a free 30-minute reading for a review. So you write to me afterwards and say, I left you a review. And then I'll say, right, let's do a divine order reading. I'll give you a divine order reading based on how I'm doing this, what I'm developing. So there we go. Thank you for listening, and thank you for inviting me.